Hi guys, welcome to Piece of Code and welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to see a very interesting and a very important topic from the exam perspective, which is AWS Global Infrastructure, and we are going to cover two services in this particular video, which is CloudFront and Global Accelerator. I have noticed that in the recent examinations of AWS certifications, right, more and more focus is given on this particular topic because in this particular topic, you're going to understand how AWS uses the power of its edge locations to transfer the data from one end of the world to another end of the world, and it does it at a lightning fast speed. We are going to see how AWS connects your your source to your destination using its amazing network of private networks, and it is going to be a very interesting topic. Okay, so let's get on with this topic. And let us go to the first slide and understand what I really mean by this. Okay, let us start presentation. So let us talk about the first service, that is Amazon CloudFront, right? And this is a content delivery network or a CDN. I don't have to explain about CDN. You guys know that basically if you have any static data or some kind of other stuff and you want to transfer that data from one source to a destination, you use a content delivery network, right? It improves read performance because it uses something known as caching at the edge location. We are going to see this in detail, so don't worry about that. It improves users experience, and it has up to 216 points of presence globally, and it is known as edge locations. We are going to see a complete list of edge locations in a minute. It provides you with DDoS protection, which is distributed denial of service protection, right? And it integrates with security services like AWS Shield and AWS WAF or Web Application Firewall. Let's move forward and see more stuff about CloudFront. Now, CloudFront Origins. Now, basically, what does CloudFront Origins mean? So, in a content delivery system, you have a source, and basically from that source, your users are in different parts of the world, right? And content from your source is distributed to all your users across the world. So your source, you can say it as it's an origin where your data actually originates. That is the source. And in this case, you can use two type of sources or origins in CloudFront, that is S3 bucket or a custom origin. Now you need to have a little bit idea about S3 bucket. It's an object storage service, but we are going to cover S3 in a different video in detail. Okay. So S3 bucket is one of the origins, and it is used for distributing files and caching them at the edge, as S3 is very much popular for keeping static data like videos, files, images, softwares and everything. You can actually cache them at the edge so that your users will be able to fetch that data at a faster pace and very easily, right? It has enhanced security with Origin Access Control or OAC. We are going to learn about that in a minute. And OAC is replacing the previous version of, you can say, OAC, which is Origin Access Identity or OAI. CloudFront can be used as an ingress. For example, you want it the other way. Instead of distributing your file using the edge locations, you want to upload the file, and using the edge locations, you want to deliver the file to your destination. So you can use for that also to upload S3 files. But that is not that much popular because we have something known as S3 transfer acceleration. We are going to cover that in our S3 video. Okay. Now, talking about custom origins, it's basically any HTTP endpoint. It can be an application load balancer, it can be an EC2 instance, it can be a S3 website, which is a static website, but you need to enable the bucket as S3 website. And it makes no sense actually, because you need to make your S3 bucket public. So you can directly use S3 as a origin, which will be better. But for other purposes like application load balancer, EC2 instance and everything, this is very good alternative. And any kind of HTTP backend you want, basically CloudFront works with everything. It can be a microservice based backend or a particular application or a load balancer or something, whatever you want. Okay, how CloudFront works, and it's at a high level. Let us understand this thing. So you have a client and it wants to fetch a particular thing, for example, a particular object in your S3 bucket, which is beach.jpg, and it has a particular size and HTTP protocol. Great. Now what is happening is that the request is first seen that okay, if it is present in the edge location, CloudFront edge location or not. If it is not present at the edge location, it forwards your request to your origin, right, which is your S3 or your HTTP endpoint. Okay, now what happens once the data is fetched back from your origin? So it is fetched back. What happens is that the data is cached as a local cache. So for the second time when the client actually requests, so this was the first time, right, this is the first request and this is the second request. So whenever the second request, the client requests for that particular data, this beach.jpg, it is already at the local cache, right? So it will be fetched back from the CloudFront edge location itself. It will not go to the origin again. So you can understand that okay, now the latency has been reduced to a great extent, because obviously you don't have to travel to the origin itself to fetch the data, but instead you are getting it from your nearest edge location or your local cache, right? That's how it works. Now let us move forward and let us understand it in a little bit more detail. Now this should make it very, very clear actually. So there are a lot of users. So this is a pair of users, and it's basically in USA, right? Because Los Angeles, and then you have Sao Paulo. These set of users are in Brazil. Yeah, Sao Paulo is in Brazil. Then Melbourne, these kind of users are in Australia, and Mumbai, these users are in India, right? So basically, but your origin S3 bucket is somewhere else. For example, it is in USA, right? It is in USA, for example. The thing is, as I've already talked about, that AWS has 216 points of presence or edge location. So there is one edge location in Mumbai, there is one edge location in Melbourne, there is one edge location in Sao Paulo, and another one is in Los Angeles, right? Cool. Now these so people from India are requesting that particular data, for example the beach.jpg, right? Beach.jpg, and they are requesting it. So basically it is not present in the edge location, so it travels to your origin, which is your S3 bucket. Well, all right, now it comes back, the data comes back, and it's get cached in your edge location first time. So for the second time, when the users request the same data, it comes from the edge location itself instead of going to the origin. So basically it doesn't have to travel through so many hops to reach the particular origin. Instead of that, it will just get fetched from your edge location. Similar thing will happen with users in Melbourne, users in Sao Paulo, and users in Los Angeles. Another thing you need to keep in mind, that from your edge location to your origin, the data transfer is being done using private AWS network. So it doesn't travel over your public networks, but instead it travels over your private AWS network. Or if you are going to compare this, you can compare it inter VPC communication. When you create a VPC in AWS, you create subnets, right? So whatever resources you keep in those subnets, they communicate with each other using a private IPv4 address. So you can think about it that it's a kind of a global network that AWS uses, and basically whatever data is being transferred from your edge location to origin, it is traveling through your private AWS network, which consists of very good, you can say, fiber optic cables and something like that. And it is very, very faster than traveling over the public internet. And along with that, you have caching. So it is like a 2-in-1 shot, and in Hindi we say it as ek teer and do nishana, right? So that's what is happening over here. So this is all about, this is an overall how CloudFront works. Similar thing happens with other origins also. So this is S3 as an origin. And yeah, basically there is a origin access control. Basically what is happening is that CloudFront, you are giving permission to CloudFront to access your S3 bucket. No one else will be able to access the S3 bucket. If someone wants to access your S3 bucket, that person should go through your CloudFront DNS URL. Got it? So it's as simple as that. So CloudFront will have a URL, and if someone wants to fetch something from your S3 bucket, it should go through your CloudFront. Directly no one will be able to access your S3 bucket. So it's going to be governed by your S3 bucket policy. Okay, so that's what OAC means. So you specify one thing as an origin, and CloudFront will only be able to access your origin. No one else will be able to access your origin. That's what it means. Cool. I hope this point is clear. Let us move forward. Okay, now people may get confused about certain things, right? And one of those things is how does CloudFront differs from S3 cross-region replication. So in S3 there is a concept of CRR or cross-region replication, where what happens is that, to put it in simple terms, you have a S3 bucket in, for example, Northern Virginia region, USA Northern Virginia region, and you have another bucket, you have created another bucket in Central 1 region, right? Central 1 region. So there is a bucket over here and there is a bucket over here. So what will happen in cross region replication, whatever data you are going to be putting inside this Northern Virginia bucket, it will be replicated across to your Central 1 region. So it's kind of a backup strategy or some kind of other stuff you can do. So this is what cross region replication means. So basically you can say that, okay, what I'll do is, instead of using CloudFront, I'll create separate buckets in each region where my users reside. For example, in this particular diagram, I will create one bucket over here, one bucket over here, one bucket over here, and one bucket over here. And I'm just going to use CRR to actually replicate my data across all the regions, and my users will be able to fetch from that particular bucket. That is also a possible solution, but do you think it is feasible and it is cost effective? If that thing comes into your mind, then you are going into the right direction, because creating so many buckets and storing the same data across all these buckets is going to charge you a lot more, right? And also a lot of data redundancy will happen, which is not good. So basically it is, if you want some kind of CDN service or transfer service, please go for CloudFront. Now let us differentiate it in detail. So it is a CloudFront is a global edge network. We have already seen this. Files are cached for a TTL. We are going to see what time to live is, or TTL means. It is great for a static content that must be available everywhere. Now what is cross region replication? As I've already told you, it must be set up for each region, like we just saw in the example that I just shown you, right? Files are updated in near real time, and it is only read only. Great for dynamic content that needs to be available at low latency in few regions. But when it comes to a great number of regions, then basically you are paying a lot more just to make that data available to the people, right? That's why you should be careful about which direction you are going into. That's the power of a cloud architect. Okay, let us move forward. So let us see this thing. As I've already told you, you can use a custom, right? A custom HTTP endpoint as your origin, right? So you can use a ALB or a EC2 as an origin, right? Same thing. So we have you have edge location. These are all your users, and basically allow public IP of edge locations. You are going to do that. So you're going to access your content through your edge location. So this is your CloudFront URL, and basically this edge location will communicate with your origin, which is in this case is your EC2 instances, right? And the same thing with application load balancer. So edge location, allow public IP of edge locations into the security group of your application load balancer, because obviously this is your security group, and in this case this is also your security group, and you need to allow CloudFront to access your security group. If you remember in S3, I have told you that S3 needs to allow CloudFront to access him, right? Because if CloudFront is not able to access S3, then how will it cache your content? Simple as that. So your security group of your EC2 instance must allow the public IP of edge locations. It means that it should have an inbound rule which allows the public IP of edge locations. Similar case with your application load balancer. And here your EC2 instances should allow the security group of application load balancer to access it. So it's kind of a two-way deal. First, you need to allow your application load balancer security group to allow the public IP of your edge locations, and you need to allow or create an inbound rule in your EC2 instances security group to allow the security group of your load balancer. And I've talked this in detail in our ELB load balancing lecture, and also in our auto scaling group lecture. If you have some doubts in this thing, please go and watch that lecture. It is on YouTube, okay, under my playlist. Okay, let us move forward. Before going into this thing, let us see an example of CloudFront, right? Let us see a demo on CloudFront. Okay guys, let us see a demo on CloudFront, how we can use CloudFront for our content caching at our edge location. Let us see a demo. So I'm just going to go to CloudFront. Okay, before going to CloudFront, I'm just going to go to S3 and I'll just upload some stuff into a S3 bucket. Create a S3 bucket and upload some stuff into it so that I can access that stuff using my CloudFront URL, right? So I'm just going to create a bucket, very easy to create, and I'm just going to name my bucket as CloudFront Origin, some random number, because if you have any idea about S3, then you would know that your name should be unique, right? It should be a globally unique name. So let us keep this region as US Northern Virginia region, and let's keep everything as defaults and just create the bucket. Okay, we have created our bucket. So this is our bucket. Let us upload some stuff into it, and I'm just going to say add files, and I'm just going to go to let's go to S3, and I'm just going to upload these three things. So index and this beach and this coffee images. Let us upload those things. All right, let us click on upload over here. Okay, we are done. So let us close this thing, and if I go into this index.html, so there are two ways of accessing this index.html page. One is basically using the object URL. So if I just right click and open in a new tab, then if I go over here, then it says access denied, and basically this is a public URL, and you have not given a bucket policy, you have not provided a bucket policy which provides public access. So basically that's why we are not able to access this index.html page. You can create a bucket policy and you can allow access, and then you will be able to do that, but that's for a later thing. But this thing, we also have a pre-signed URL using which we will be able to access our content in our bucket. So this pre-signed URL, if I'm going to put it in simple terms, so it contains a security token and stuff which allows this particular user, whoever created that particular bucket, to access the content, right? So the image over here is not able to display because obviously the permissions to display the image is not there, right? We don't have any bucket policy or anything. We just have the permission to display the index.html page. That's why we are able to see the index.html page, and this we are able to do using a signed URL which has been created for this particular user only. So this is how you do it using simple terms. Now let us do one thing. Let us create a CloudFront distribution, and let us keep this particular bucket as an origin, and let us see how we can configure it to deliver the data across edges in the whole world. Let us go to CloudFront, and just going to right click and click on a new tab so that we'll be able to see something over here and here. Let me go to my bucket, and these are all the images, the objects in my bucket. I'm going to create a CloudFront distribution, and I'm going to name this distribution as, before that we need to select a origin, and I will select my S3 bucket which I had just created right now, which is my CloudFront origin bucket. I'm going to select that, and let us see the name, enter a name for this origin. Let us keep that. Origin access should be origin access control, right? And we have to create a origin access control, OAC, right? So let us create a origin access control, create control settings, and let us create it. Okay, so we have this origin access control setting, and it has been created for my particular origin, which is this particular S3 bucket, right? So I had created that. So this is done, and you should update the S3 bucket policy, because obviously when we were talking in the theory section, we saw that your CloudFront distribution must be able to access your S3 bucket. If your CloudFront distribution is not able to access your S3 bucket, how will it fetch the data? Simple question, right? That's why we need to update the bucket policy. We are going to do that later, don't worry about that. Default cache behavior, just keep it all simple. Additional settings, Okay, if you want to integrate with AWS WAF, no need to do that. So in the default root object, I'm just going to, so basically when you click on the particular or you access your particular CloudFront distribution URL, a default object, if you for example my index.html, it will be my default object when I go for my CloudFront distribution URL, or if I access my CloudFront distribution URL. So I'm just going to say index.html, right? Cool stuff. I'm just going to now create the distribution. I think everything else is fine. Let us create a distribution. Now it says S3 bucket policy needs to be updated. So I'm just going to copy the policy over here, and I'm going to, so there is a link over here. So I'm just going to go into my S3 bucket policy, and I'm just going to copy paste that policy, because it's easier instead of creating a new bucket policy. Edit the policy over here. And if you don't know how to access the bucket policy, let me also explain that to you. So in your bucket, okay, you can go to permissions. In permissions, you have your bucket policy. Simple as that. So go to edit, just paste the policy we just copied. And if you're going to try to understand this policy, let me just explain it a little bit about the policy. So it has a allow effect, okay, and the service which is having that allow effect is your CloudFront service. It has an action which is S3 get object. It means that it only be able to fetch the data from your S3 bucket. The resource is this particular CloudFront distribution that we just created, and condition is if this particular resource is matched, it means that this particular CloudFront distribution ARN is matched, then only the access will be given to this S3 bucket. In simple terms, your CloudFront distribution will only be able to access your S3 bucket using this S3 bucket policy, right? Let us save the changes, and it's all done. Cool. This is my CloudFront URL, and I think we are done. So okay, so let us go to my distributions. So it has been enabled. So let us wait for 1 to 2 minutes. I'm going to pause the video because it will take some time to integrate with your origin and everything. So let us wait for 1 to 2 minutes. I'm going to pause the video for now and then resume it in a minute. Okay guys, so welcome back. So my CloudFront distribution is now deployed. So I'm just going to go inside my distribution and copy the distribution domain name, and I'm just going to go like http:// and paste my, sorry, I'm just going to paste my domain name over here and just hit enter. So as you can see that the first load of this particular URL was a little bit slow, because it went to my origin first and fetched the data, and it displayed on my screen on my browser. But if I reload this thing, now see how fast it is. Then let me just copy this URL and paste it in a particular new tab, and see how fast it is. Super duper fast, lightning fast. And you can also test it by going into an incognito tab and paste it over here, so you can see how easy it is to fetch the data. If you want to fetch, for example, the beach.jpg, so beach.jpg, as you can see, this data has been fetched now, and if I just reload, it has also been saved in my cache. So that's how CloudFront distribution works. You can try it out and see how amazing this is, right? Okay, now let us go back to our slides and let us see some other stuff, right? Now this is known as CloudFront Geo Restriction, right? You can restrict who can access your distribution. Basically, if you want to allow people from a specific country to access your data, or you want to blacklist some people from a particular geographic location to not basically blacklist means that not allowing, right? So you can also blacklist them or allow them. You can do that, right? Basically this is basically done, right, if you are working on a government application or some kind of other stuff which has confidential information or some kind of that thing, and you are only allowing people from a specific geographic location, right? So that's the use case you can think of. So it has a allow list, allow your users to access your content only if they are in one of the countries on a list of approved countries, or there is also a block list. Prevent your users from accessing your content if they are in one of the countries in a list of banned countries. Use case, copyright laws to control access to content, right? Now I can show you an example for geo restriction. We just created our distribution, right? So let us go back over here into our distribution, and here there is a tab for geographic restrictions. Let us go there, and you can just click edit over here, and you can create a allow list. For example, you just want to allow people from India, right? You can just select that as an allow list, or you want to allow people from I think Korea or South Korea or USA, right? Something like that. You can do that, or you can create a block list which will block specific countries, right? If you create a block list with India, then people from India will not be able to access the content, and then you save the changes and basically it is done. Let us cancel this. So that's how you do it, your geographic restrictions. Very, very easy. Let us move forward, guys. Okay, now let us go to the next slide. Let us talk about CloudFront pricing. So your CloudFront edge locations are all around the world. The cost of data per edge location varies. So it means that basically you are storing some data in India edge location and you are storing some data in the US edge location, then basically the cost will differ. Basically in India it is a little bit more pricey than other edge locations, and I think the most priced edge location is in Australia, I think. So here you can see the pricings. Basically, if you see for the first 10 TB of data in United States, Mexico and Canada, it is just $0.085, but in India it is actually the double, which is $0.170 right? And similarly this thing appears over here and there. You can just see the difference in prices by seeing this particular table, right? Let us move forward. There are some price classes, so you can reduce the number of edge locations for cost reduction. So basically you can just say that, okay, please cache my particular data in only these edge locations to reduce your expenses. So there are three price classes. Price class all, it includes all the regions and it has the best performance and the most cost, right? Then there is price class 200. It includes the most regions but excludes the most expensive regions. And then we have price class 100. Only the least expensive regions are selected. So you can just see a particular table over here. In price class all, basically all of those things are selected. In price class 200, Australia and New Zealand is unselected, but you have, and South America is also unselected, and you have all these locations other than that. And price class 100, basically only you get Europe and the European and the Middle East, some kind of Middle East countries, and some Mexico and Canada, right? So and other things are crossed. Cool. Here you can see this diagram which basically shows you a better picture of what is happening. Like the price class all is basically this Venn diagram. If you see this pink dotted one is price class all, 200 is the green ones, and 100 is the blue ones. Okay, let us talk about cache invalidations, and as the name suggests, you invalidate your cache or remove the data from your cache, right? In case you update the backend origin, CloudFront doesn't know about it and will only get the refreshed content after the TTL has expired. So there is a TTL, which is time to live. Okay, and for the time to live period, the data is cached in your particular edge location and the data is not updated even if there is some change in your particular source or your origin. Cool. However, you can force an entire or partial cache refresh, right? So thus bypassing the TTL by performing a CloudFront invalidation. It means that before your TTL expires, you can actually refresh the content on your edge location by invalidating your TTL or just by removing your TTL. That's what it means. You can invalidate all the files from your origin. It means that, for example, in your S3 buckets there are 100 objects and you just invalidate your cache and invalidate your TTL, and basically you just refresh for all the 100 objects, or you can just go for a specific object, for example this index.html, right? So you can do that. So in your edge locations you just invalidate them and then basically your particular cache is updated, right? That's the simple thing about cache invalidation. So that was all about CloudFront. I hope you guys understood what I meant about CloudFront. Let us talk about the second service, which is a part of AWS Global Network. But before going to that service, which is your Global Accelerator, let us understand this particular concept. Global users for our application, right? Your application has global users. So you have deployed an application and have global users who want to access it directly. What they do, basically simple stuff, is that they go over the public internet, which can add a lot of latency due to many hops, because obviously if you have a public load balancer in India and someone is accessing from America, then the data will travel through a lot of hops that is taken, right? And it also causes a lot of latency due to that. But what you can do is you can leverage the AWS network to minimize latency, and let us see how we can do that. We saw an example in CloudFront. Let us see over here how it is done. Let us talk about this Unicast IP and Anycast IP. So Unicast IP means that one server holds only one IP address. So you have a couple of servers, right? And all the servers have their own public IP addresses, right? That is known as a Unicast IP. Anycast IP means that all servers hold the same IP address and the client is routed to the nearest one. So if you see this thing, this is the client and these are two servers, and these two are having the same IP addresses. So but this is closer. So basically the request is redirected to that particular closest web server, right? That is known as a Anycast IP. And basically your global accelerator works on the principle of Anycast IP. You're going to see that in a minute. So AWS Global Accelerator. So what you do, you leverage the AWS internal network to route your application, right? Two Anycast IP are created for your application. The Anycast IP send traffic directly to the edge locations. The edge locations in turn send the traffic to your application. Simple stuff. So your Anycast IP, so you have two Anycast IP and it is created for your application. For example, this is your public ALB over here, right? And basically what is happening is that you use your Anycast IP to send the data to your edge location, right? The traffic is sent to your edge location, and from your edge location the particular traffic is routed from your using your private AWS, not your private AWS network, but AWS's private network to the particular the destination, right? So basically that's what it's happening, right? Basically instead of using your own IP address or something like that, basically using different IP addresses, you use Anycast IP to actually route the data from the edge location to your application. That's what it is happening. Okay, easy stuff. If you see this example from Australia, you send the data using a private AWS network to the load balancer which is in India. Makes sense? If you have any doubts, please put it down in the comments. I'll be able to answer them. Okay, it's the same slide. So AWS Global Accelerator works with Elastic IP, EC2 instances, ALB, NLB, public or private, works with anything. It has consistent performance, intelligent routing to the lowest latency and fast regional failover. No issue with client cache because the IP doesn't change as you are using an Anycast IP. Internal AWS network or private AWS network. Health checks are there. Global Accelerator performs a health check of your applications. You can also have an additional health check using your load balancers also. So there are a lot of stages in which you can create a highly available application, right? It's up to you. Helps make your application global. Failover less than 1 minute for unhealthy, for example, instances you have. Great for disaster recovery thanks to the health checks, because for example, if Global Accelerator sees that this is an unhealthy application source, then basically it will just fail over to the nearest application that you have. Security, only 2 external IP need to be whitelisted, right? And DDoS protection thanks to AWS Shield, right? So AWS Shield is a service which helps helps for DDoS attacks. There is also AWS Shield Advanced. We're going to discuss that later on our AWS security video. Don't worry about that right now. Just understand about Global Accelerator. Now you may get confused between this Global Accelerator and CloudFront, and it is also very natural to get confused, but let us understand the differences and how you answer the question regarding these two. They both use the AWS Global Network, as we have discussed right now, right? And its edge locations are all around the world. That's much is common. Both services integrate with AWS Shield for DDoS protection. These are all the common things, but let us understand the differences. CloudFront improves performance for both cacheable content such as images and videos, and also dynamic content such as API acceleration and dynamic site delivery, because you can have anything as an origin in CloudFront, right? It can be a S3 website, or it can be any custom HTTP endpoint. Content is served at the edge. Global Accelerator improves performance for wide range of application over TCP or UDP, proxying packets at the edge to applications running in one or more AWS regions. Good fit for non-HTTP use cases. So these are all, I am underlining all the important points, such as gaming, UDP, MQTT or voice over IP. Good for HTTP use cases that require static IP addresses. Good for HTTP use cases that require deterministic fast regional failover. So what do we understand from these differences? If your requirement is content delivery, caching at the edge, dynamic site delivery, or some kind of static delivery like images, videos and some kind of cacheable content, you use CloudFront. Close your eyes and go for CloudFront. If your requirement is TCP or UDP traffic, Anycast IP, you don't want your IP to change. Some non-HTTP use cases like gaming application, UDP, IoT, MQTT, messaging service or something like that, you will use Global Accelerator, right? So this is how you differentiate between questions regarding Global Accelerator and CloudFront. Very, very important, guys. All right, let's move forward. Okay, so that was all about CloudFront and Global Accelerator. I'm not going to able to show you a demo on Global Accelerator because it will cost me some money, but it is kind of the same thing. You understood the difference and everything, so it's good, right? I hope you liked the video, and I'm going to see you in the next video. All right, till then, bye bye.